Hello and welcome to the Mindset Michele TV show. We're so super excited for you to be joining us, and we're so super excited to welcome today's guest, the lovely Tess Julian. Hello, Tess.
Hello, Michele. Lovely to see you.
It's so wonderful to have you on the show, and thank you, Tess, for coming on today. And please explain to people, how did you become like a lifelong consultant, and what is it that you're passionate about with what you do?
Oh, well, thank you, Michele, very much for having me on the show. It's a great pleasure. Now, I started my working life as a high school teacher, actually, and I was a teacher of English and drama. And then I went wandering over the world and ended up in Italy teaching English as a second language. So I've had a very strong educational background at the University of Bari. When I returned to Australia, I sort of made my way more into the vocational education sphere and had a baby, and decided to do it on my own. And so I set up my own consultancy. And I suppose then I did that for, I don't know, a number of years. Then the whole notion of innovation had captured my imagination, and I'd done some consulting work around that because I was very much involved in the skills for the vocational education system, and that was one of the emerging skills. They were wondering, how can we grapple with it? So I did that as part of a consultancy, and then I ended up working for a company called Innovation Exchange, which was about building collaborations between organisations, and particularly around science. Then after that, I met Alan Ryan from Hargreaves, and it's been a wonderfully interesting journey. And I suppose if you were asked me what was the thread that linked all of those things, it's about being future-oriented, about imagination, but the most important thing is it's about the people. And now I think my focus, sometimes people ask me, what do I do? And I say, I try and make people be nice to each other at work. But really, it's about allowing people to be there, to bring their best selves to work and to be their best selves at work, so that it is for the success of the company or the organisation and for themselves.
Wow, and thank you, because I can really see how that training in being a teacher is helping people to be their best, and organisations to help them flourish in that environment. What would you say then is your definition of success for you now?
Well, it's interesting. I think, and of course, being a mother as well, we think about this for our children. How do we shape our children so that they can feel successful, but also how can we help people at work? And my definition of success is really that you craft or have crafted a life that you're proud of, that you feel proud of. And that can be different depending on who you are and what is important. For me, I feel like I have crafted a life that has given me independence. It's given me variety, and it has allowed me to do work which I can see the impact in areas and in things that are important to me. So, but that will vary depending on who you are, of course, and what your values are and what you care about.
Wow, what incredible, and thank you so much. I really love the depth of what you're sharing about. You've crafted that life that you're proud of. I haven't heard it described in such a beautiful way before, but I think that really ultimately for just about everybody, would be success, is crafting the life in the way that you would have liked to have crafted it.
And it involved, for me, living independently, but also living ethically, having good relationships, having a good friendship network, having good relationships with family, friends, clients, and a broader network, a community.
I've heard some of these concepts described before, but the way that you're crafting the way you're describing it to yourself is just so incredibly beautiful. Thank you so much, Tess. So with such a beautiful start around what does success mean, I'm more than fascinated now, Tess. What are some of the suggestions and tips that you have for viewers about how they can create a successful and a positive life?
Well, I have thought about this too. I mean, we in Hargraves do a lot of work around an innovation mindset, which is, I think, very similar to a mindset for success. And the things that have struck me as being most important in that, we've got a framework which we look at the behaviours and the perspectives and things. And when I was thinking about it, I thought, what are the things that I think are the most important? And the first one that jumps out at me is helpfulness. I have been really impressed and influenced by the work of a man called Adam Grant, who's a professor at Wharton, in the United States. And he did fascinating research into the actual value, the economic value of helpfulness in organisations. And what he found was that organisations that had that culture of helpfulness were much more productive, they were more profitable, they worked better. And also what he found, and what we have found subsequently in doing our own research into this, is that when asked, most people are very willing to give help. You want to help others if they ask you. The problem is asking for help. People are often don't feel comfortable asking for help. They feel like, oh, they're silly, or they'll work it out themselves, or they don't want to be a burden. But in fact, what I recognise is that, what sets entrepreneurs, for instance, apart is that they're not afraid to ask for help. They ask for money, they ask for assistance, they ask for partnerships. They, get coaches, they get mentors, they get training. They ask for help. To me, being able to ask for help and being willing to give help in a workplace is vitally important for success and critical. So
it's an interesting concept, this whole helpfulness, and again, I've heard it described in different ways. Being of service, this and that, volunteering, showing initiative. There's lots of different ways, but describing it as helpfulness, and the thing that I do understand is that people feeling uncomfortable asking for help, that when we don't necessarily live in cultures where it's natural to ask for help. And it is funny you pulled out entrepreneurs, because they're naturally always asking for help and for, can you get me money, can you get me connections, can you this, can you that. And so they're good examples of people that create a successful career constantly asking for help from other people to keep their ideas and their businesses going. It's something that I think, whether you look in life or in business, giving the help and receiving the help are things that make everybody more productive. So I think this helpfulness around as part of an innovation mindset is something that is very, very valuable.
It really is. And not only that, in an organisation, it is contagious. So if you ask for help, other people ask you. And so there has to be that reciprocity as well. You don't want to become a doormat, like there is a balance in both asking for help and giving help. So there are some sort of boundaries around it. In some organisations, it's fascinating that they have actual sort of practices where you, if somebody asks you for help, you make that a priority above what you have to do, so that it really embeds that culture. And of course, once that happens, people, I suppose, filter when they ask for help, and not just asking for help to relieve them of their workload, but they're asking for help when they actually really need help. And of course, the next thing is the other side of helpfulness is gratitude, and being thanking people appropriately when they help you. My other one is one that I have really learnt for myself, actually, particularly since I've been with Hargraves, and it's what we call the yes and mentality. Our programs, I run a program for women, and I run innovation programs and collaboration leadership. We do an exercise on yes and as opposed to yes but, because yes but gives the appearance of being open. Yes, but it'll never work here. Yes, but we tried it before, you know, those sort of responses. And actually disciplining yourself to say instead, yes, and how could we make that work here? Or yes, and tell me more about what you're thinking. Or yeah. And, you know, it's one of the most powerful things when we do the programs. We go, oh, my God, it's, you know, having an open mind, letting ideas breathe, you know, letting people's ideas sort of have a little life before you kill them off. So I think that is an incredibly important skill, and it's something you can train yourself to do, because it's much easier to knock ideas on the head than it is to actually think about how could we actually implement that in some way, or what is good about that idea and what can we take from it and turn into something else. So I think that's a really important thing as well.
I love that, because I think that people talk about it in you know, innovation sort of space, about incubation of ideas and cocooning and all of this sort of stuff. But and the use of the word "and" is very much a part of that, creating that environment for it to be able to be, you know, the start of an idea, the germ of an idea, and it's not fully formed and it's not fully this and that and costed or whatever. Rather than the but, and then listing out the reasons why it couldn't happen and why they've tried it before, etc. I think that, you know, the people looking to create that positive mindset, these powerful, small but powerful tools around, you know, the gratitude and using yes and to open things up.
Yeah. I know, and it's amazing how many you know, people who we work with go, oh, it really changed my thinking, you know, because words are powerful, words matter, and that little trick is something that you can apply in lots of different situations.
I was going to just say that when you were talking about the helpfulness, one of the thoughts that I did have come up then was around being able to say no, because especially for women can be a bit too helpful at times to their own detriment, and their energy and their mind, mental health, wellness in an organisation. I love this idea then of matching it with the, instead of yes but, I'd like to help you, yes but I've got all of this my own work to do. If you reframe that as yes, I'd love to help you, and how can we do your work as well as my work, is the way where we can work together to get both sets of work done. It's a way of opening it up again.
Another one, which I think is incredibly important, is listening and really hearing people who have different ideas, different perspectives. You know, so often you've got something, you've thought it through, you've got the solution, you've consulted your little circle of trust, and that's basically all the people who agree with you and who you have chosen because, you know, they agree with you. And you think, yep, we're ready to go. And then there's some little voice somewhere says, I think maybe you should consider this. And you go, oh, no, but so important not to disregard it, to actually listen, even if you don't end up accepting that viewpoint, listening to other people's voices and opinions and perspectives, processing it, really trying to understand it, I think is, well, it's very important for innovation because it means you're getting different perspectives, different viewpoints. So as I've said, a lot of the work I do is around diversity, inclusion, and Women at Work, a program for women. And we focus a lot on that because we all have biases. We all have our circle of trust. We all, surround ourselves with people who are like us, really, and to our detriment and to the detriment of our companies. And we know that because there's a lot of evidence to show that the greater diversity, the more profitability and prosperity and thriving. So understanding what prevents us from listening to other voices, and really understanding them is, really knowing our own biases and working on, you're never going to, biases are shortcuts, really, aren't they, to making decisions about things. It's based on experience, but they can be so detrimental, and they can create so many barriers in our interactions and also in the systems that we create. Because the thing that we do in the women's program, it's not about changing the women, it's about changing the systems so that we can accommodate women and make it better for everyone. That's, my philosophy, basically. So I think that the diversity and inclusion thing is really important.
And I think that that's a really important and wonderful distinction that you made around, that very traditional way of organisations operating. And so that diversity and inclusion hasn't necessarily heard different voices, let alone women's voices. And it's not necessarily women, and this is what's traditional happened, women adapting to then fit in, but the organisation adapting so that it is more inclusive of women, people from culturally diverse backgrounds, et cetera, et cetera. So, and in terms of creating that successful mindset, I like your underlying point about being open to different viewpoints and listening in to what other people have to say. If you were to give some advice to your younger self, Tess, what do you think that a nice advice might be?
Well, the thing I was thinking about, be curious and learn, but also don't second guess yourself. And don't, the one thing I have learned, I always used to think that people in power, politicians, all had some special knowledge that I could never have access to. And I have realised as I've got older that is actually not true. So don't always think that everybody is smarter than you, that you can do things, which is not to say that you don't have to keep learning and experiencing new things.
I love that. Be curious and keep learning and keep growing. Thank you so much for so beautifully coming on the show and sharing these insights today, Tess.
Thank you, Michele. It's been lovely talking to you.
So for now, though, it's the end of another show. So from my heart to your heart, be great, be fabulous, and be you.